Hello, everyone. My name is Connor Gray. Today, I have the opportunity to talk to all of you about Wolfram Paclets. So what are Wolfram Paclets? Well, Paclets are our technology for bundling up code and data that gets distributed in the Wolfram system. So when a lot of functionality that's part of the system is actually broken up into these things that we call Paclets. And so they're a way that code and other things can be shared and distributed in a modular way. So they're a very powerful way of creating kind of collections of content that you might want to preserve or share with your colleagues or with other users or publicly. They are an archive format for basically everything that you can extend the Wolfram system with. So as I was saying, Paclets add new functionality to the Wolfram language. That's their basic function. The most common thing that by far that Paclets contain is Wolfram language source code, and that comes in the form of .wl or .m files. But in addition to source code, Paclets can also contain things that add new features to the front end, like palette menu items or style sheets. So Paclets are a generic way of storing any kind of content that the Wolfram system can discover and kind of add into various places throughout the system. Auto-completions are also something that are stored in Paclets. As I mentioned, a lot of the built-in functionality in Wolfram system, when we who work on the Wolfram language every day want to add something new to the system that's a new area of functionality, oftentimes that will be a dedicated Paclet. A few versions ago, I believe it was 12.1, we started opening up the Paclet system so that users of the Wolfram language could create their own Paclets in an easier way and use them to distribute their content. So these days, it's very easy to inspect all the Paclets that make up an active Wolfram language installation. There's a function just called Paclet Find, and if we go ahead and run it, it actually this returns hundreds and hundreds of Paclets. So I'm just going to show you the first 10 just to give you an idea. But you can see there's Paclets for things like classifiers for specific kinds of content. Lots of the chemistry functionality is in a Paclet, chat tools, benchmarking, all kinds of stuff are developed in the form of a Paclet that goes into the base installation of the Wolfram language. Now I mentioned that in 12.1, we first added the basic functionality for users to create and interact with Paclets. Over the subsequent versions, we've been fleshing out our technology for authoring and building and kind of going through the development process of working with Paclets. In Wolfram language version 13, we added a bunch of new tools, notably the documentation tools package, which is a tool similar in form to what we use at Wolfram Research to author the documentation that you can browse in the system. So this is a tool that enables anyone who wants to create a Paclet to write their own documentation pages that can be just as full-featured as those that are built into the language. In addition to documentation tools, there's also the aptly named PacletTools package, which contains some functionality for building documentation, building Paclets, and inspecting the content that is in Paclets. And this is intended to be used by people who are interested in developing their own Paclets and functionality that is built on top of Paclets. Also, the Wolfram Paclet Repository. This is in the style of our existing repositories, like the function repository or the data repository, but it's the Paclet repository, and it's a place where anyone can upload a Paclet that they want to share with the rest of the Wolfram language community. The great thing about the Paclet repository is that just like the other the other repositories that we have, any content that's in the Paclet repository can be easily installed by any other user of the Wolfram language. So just to give you an example, I'll take one of the random Paclets off the front page. Let's say Wolfram Paclet CI/CD. Paclet repository, has what we call a shingle page. It's kind of a landing page. It's where you get to say hello and introduce your Paclet to people who want to browse for interesting Paclets. And importantly, it also has this Paclet install command on it. So if I want to try out this CI/CD Paclet, all I have to do is click to copy this install command and go back over to my my Wolfram language session and run that, and it actually goes ahead and installs that Paclet for me right on the spot. So it's a very easy and powerful way of getting your content that you want to share with others as easily as possible into other people's hands. So we're really happy to have the Paclet repository, and like I said, it's relatively new, but we're looking forward to people who want to develop Paclets, hopefully uploading their Paclets there and sharing them with the rest of the community. So that's a bit of a high-level overview of what Paclets are and what they're useful for. The rest of this talk is kind of going to be structured as kind of a deep dive into what goes into Paclets and how Paclets work, with the intention that people who want to develop Paclets can kind of learn about how you actually do that. So the first thing I'll talk about is, well, we want to make a Paclet. How do we do that? So as I mentioned, there's this PacletTools collection of functionality that you can go ahead and load in your Wolfram Language session. And this gives you a function called create Paclet. So this is just a helper that will create the initial content for a new Paclet. Create Paclet, it takes two arguments. It takes the name of your Paclet, and it takes the directory where you want to create that new Paclet. Now, you might notice that this Paclet is actually made up of two components. I'll note that this is not actually a file path. This is the identifier for the Paclet. And the first component is made up of what we call the publisher ID. This identifies an individual organization who is kind of the authority for this Paclet. They're the publisher, they take responsibility for what's in it. The second is just what we call the base name. This is the descriptive name for what the Paclet's actually about. So if you were writing a Paclet that was all about chemistry, say, this would be chemistry. So I can go ahead and run this code, and we're going to see that it's going to create a new set of files on my desktop. You can see this directory just popped up over here. I can go ahead and just double check, confirm with the system what it thinks the location of that Paclet is. Just make sure that file path looks right. I'm going to go ahead and open up a file browser just so we can poke in that. So what did this create? Well, it created a couple of things. It created a PacletInfo.wl file. Now, the PacletInfo.wl file is technically, it's the only file in a Paclet that's actually required to exist. It's the metadata that describes that this directory is a Paclet, and it includes things like, if I just preview this file here, it's got a Paclet object, which is kind of the Wolfram Language symbolic representation of what's in a Paclet. And we can see in here, it's got the name that I specified to create Paclet. And it's also got the publisher ID and various other things that I'll go into detail in a moment. So created that Paclet info file, and it created some other things that we're going to have a look at. So right, it's basically what I was just saying, but it created this Paclet info file in here. And yeah, that's the description of what's in the Paclet. The name, like I mentioned, that we passed to create Paclet is the first field in that metadata info. I'll just mention actually, this name is what shows up. I mean, this is like the display name for your Paclet. It's what shows up on the Paclet repository. You can see when I was back here on the Paclet repository website, every Paclet has a name, Wolfram / something or me, Connor. The next field is just this publisher ID field. This is, like I said, this is the authority. This is kind of the person who owns this. Many people do. The name will be different for each Paclet, but the publisher ID will be the same because they're all your Paclet. And just to see, so that publisher ID is actually, it's part of our Wolfram resource system. So if you've ever published something to the Wolfram function repository or one of our other repositories, you'll have a publisher ID. If you don't, there's an online form where you can just go ahead and register your publisher ID. It's very easy. But once you've done that, inside the Wolfram language session, if you're signed in, $publisher ID is going to be that same value. If you're not signed in, just you can use Cloud Connect to go ahead and connect. Next up is a version field in the Paclet info. So this just distinguishes different releases of your Paclet. So you release initial version of your Paclet, that might be some small version number like this. Maybe you go straight to publishing a 1.0 version. That's up to the author to choose. But as you make changes to your Paclet, you'll increment one of these version number components as appropriate for the size of the change that you made. So version is just a way to signal to users of your Paclet that there's new content available and how different that new version of your Paclet might be from existing versions. As a note, we strongly recommend that Paclet authors adhere to the semantic versioning standard. This is mentioned in the Paclet repository guidelines, which you can find on the Paclet repository website. But semantic versioning is just a convention that makes the numbers in a version number significant to users or interpretable. So that's the version field. Next up is the Wolfram version field. So this is the thing that declares what versions of the Wolfram language your Paclet is compatible with. So let's say you write a Paclet first in Wolfram Language version 13.0. You might declare that your Wolfram Language version is, well, 13.0. But let's say, a little while later, we've released Wolfram Language version 13.1, and you decide there's a new function that's in Wolfram Language version 13.1 that you really want to use in your Paclet. That's a-okay. You just have to remember to be sure to update the Wolfram version field of your Paclet to reflect that you're using content, new functionality from Wolfram Language version 13.1. This is a way of signaling to users of your Paclet whether or not they can actually use it or not. If somebody's running Wolfram Language 12.3 and you've declared, that it's only compatible with 13.1, that'll let those people know that they're not able to use your Paclet without upgrading, which is important because if they were able to use it, some things might go wrong if there were functions that didn't exist in the older version that you were using in your code. So that's Wolfram version. So far, all the fields we looked at were they're kind of metadata about the Paclet, but they're not really the meat of the Paclet. The extensions are where we really get into kind of real content that's the thing you're actually trying to distribute as part of your Paclet. As I mentioned, the purpose of Paclets, the reason we have this technology is that they are, excuse me, they are a way of extending the Wolfram language with new content. I mentioned primarily that new content comes in the form of code, but other things are allowed as well. So anything that can be in a Paclet that extends the Wolfram language with new content is something that's declared in the extensions field. So I mentioned that primarily it's code. That's the kernel extension. So if you have code that you want to add to the Wolfram system, you'd create a Paclet that has a kernel extension. The kernel name it just means that what you're adding is kind of extending the language in some way. You're adding new functions to it. You might just think of this as, this name is, has a certain history that is why it is what it is, but it just means code, basically. Now, in this extension, it takes some options. The first is the root option. This just specifies what file directory the files associated with this extension are in, because we call it kernel. By convention, the kernel extension is going to be stored in a directory called kernel. So, that's just the directory that those files are going to be stored in. Next up is the context option. So this is where the Wolfram language context for the package that you're writing is declared. And what I mean by context is anything that you can pass to the Wolfram language get or needs functions. So you saw in the code I ran earlier that I evaluated needs of PacletTools. Well, the reason I can do that is that there's actually a Paclet in the system called PacletTools that declares a kernel extension, and that kernel extension specifies a context called PacletTools. So that's how the system knows when I evaluate needs of PacletTools where it should find the source code associated with that. And just to peek under the hood a little bit, the way that actually works is that there's a function in the language called findFile. And if you give it a context, it goes off and tries to find what file it should load when you do needs on that context. And we can actually see here that it's going and finding, I have PacletTools version 0.0.12 installed, and it has a kernel subdirectory, and inside that subdirectory, there is a PacletTools.wl file. So that's the actual file that gets loaded when you evaluate needs PacletTools. And just like for PacletTools, as for any custom Paclets you might have, it's the same process. When you declare a context in the kernel extension, that makes that context known to findFile and needs and related functions. Right, and so just to be clear, the context that you specify, by default, it's going to look for a file that has the same name as the last component in the context. I happen to spell it out explicitly here using this alternate form where a context is mapped directly to a file name. But you could just as easily just say context arrow the context itself. But that's how the system knows what file is associated with that context. So just to illustrate, in the previous step, I created this Paclet. So this Paclet exists. It's on my desktop right now. But at the moment, the Wolfram language doesn't actually know that it exists. And the way I can prove that is if I do needs of, oh, maybe I did load it in an earlier step. Well, okay. I guess I did load it. But by default, when you use create Paclet, it creates some files on your system, but it doesn't actually load your Paclet into the Wolfram language. So I've got a fresh session here. Oh, you know what? I think I have a previous version of this Paclet installed from the last time I gave this presentation at the Wolfram Summer School a few months ago. So that's why that's not doing what I expect. I'm expecting this to error. Let's just try this one more time. Right, there we go. Okay, so now it's working as I expect. Right, so I created this Paclet. It's on my desktop, but the system doesn't know about it unless I tell it about it. So if I try to do needs of that context, the system says, "Hey, I don't know anything about this context." So if I want to tell the system about my Paclet, one way to do that is a function called Paclet directory load, which I just give it the file path to my directory or to my Paclet. Oh, and okay, well, that's not defined, but I know that path. So right, so if I do Paclet directory load of that file path, now system is telling me, okay, this file path has been added to the list of known Paclets. And now if I run needs of my Paclet, I don't get an error that it returns nothing. That just means it was loaded successfully. And if I use find file, it's going to tell me the location of that file that it's loading for that context. And all of that, again, happens because I've declared that context field in the PacletInfo file. So the system knows about my Paclet, and the Paclet tells the system about this context that it has. Okay, so that's kernel. That's extending the system with new code. But like I said, Paclets can contain things other than just code. The other most common thing that they typically contain is documentation, and especially Paclets that are authored by external folks, folks who don't work on the Wolfram language. These are, documentation is very important for making sure that people know how to use your package. And I'll go through how to author documentation now. So by default, a new Paclet contains a documentation directory, but there's not really anything in that directory yet. So if we want to add new documentation, we need to use that documentation tools tool that I mentioned earlier. Now, documentation tools is built into the Wolfram language, like I said, starting in Wolfram language version 13 and newer. And if you go into the system palettes menu, you can open it up. There it is. So if I go ahead and click on that, it's going to open up the palette. And there it is. So this is the documentation tools palette. This is all the functionality you need to create new documentation. Now I'm going to have to select here. I'm going to have to tell the palette about which Paclet I want to add new content to. So I'm going to go ahead and click that Add Paclet button and select my Paclet directory. And it's going to ask me to just confirm some information about it, make sure I've got the right Paclet. That all looks right. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And now you can see it's my Paclet that's selected. And you can also see that it's created some new directories down here. Now, these are the default directories for the three most common types of documentation, which are symbol reference pages or function pages, tutorials, and guide pages. Now, I'm going to briefly walk you through how you create a basic function reference page. The palette contains all the things you need to make new documentation. All I have to do to make a new page is just hit new function page. And it's going to ask me to pick a name. Well, I'm just going to say hello. And it's going to open up a new little notebook. And this notebook is where I can author my documentation. So these notebooks are actually what work on when we're writing new documentation. They have a kind of the name of the symbol that's being documented. This is what we call the usage message. So this is kind of a brief one-line description of what your function does. So I happen to know that this say hello function is going to, well, it's going to greet people. So it takes a name parameter. And I'm going to say that say hello prints a greeting message saying hello to the named person. So that's a basic piece of documentation. Now a couple of things. This name here, because it represents a function parameter, we often don't want to style it just as plain text. We want to style it kind of in a italicized way that it kind of represents something that can be any value. And the way we do that is this template input button. So that just turns that parameter into a template argument. And if I go ahead and click that, it asks me if I want to make that a link or just format it. Well, I don't want to link anything, so I'm just going to say format. And I'm going to do that not only in the parameter, but also where I reference the parameter in the documentation message. So I'll go ahead and hit template input again. Say I just want to format that. And now you can see that name is kind of appropriately styled for being a function parameter. So that's the basic usage message. You can do more complicated things in these notebooks. You can link to related tutorials or tech notes. You can put in arbitrary links to other web pages or other functions and things in the system, or not functions, but other things in the system. You can add in links to other symbols, and you can add in links to other guide pages. You can also include examples for your functions. So you'll want to include the examples initialization. This has been filled out by default, but you can put other code in here if your Paclet's more complicated to load. This is just something that gets run for every example. And then you can write a basic example. So I might say, I want to specify that I want to be putting in text. So I'll just go ahead and use the insert text button to insert some plain text. And I'll say, say hello can be used to print a greeting. That's my textual description. And then I'll just say hello of, I don't know, $username. Okay, so that's my example. Now, one thing I forgot to mention, but is important to realize, is that the create Paclet function, it actually generates a .wl file for you as well. This is just a kind of placeholder that you'd fill in with whatever the content of your Paclet's going to be. That placeholder happens to define a bit of code in our standard package format convention. So it begins with a begin package statement and kind of has a declaration of all the public symbols in that package. And it provides a very basic definition for this placeholder say hello function. And because it does that, I can actually evaluate this example here, and it works. But that's not magic. It's just create Paclet, creating some placeholder content. You're expected to change what's in this file to suit the Paclet that you're the package that you want to write. Okay, so cool. So now I have a very basic function page, and you'll notice right off the bat, this obviously looks pretty different from the documentation you see in the system. And that's because, as it says up here, this is actually a function page authoring notebook. Documentation notebooks go through a processing step to actually transform them into the kind of final pretty form that they have in a finished Paclet. So we can build documentation as well. The PacletTools package that I mentioned actually has functionality for building documentation in it. It's got this Paclet documentation build function. If I go ahead and I'm going to just set this so that I can use it. Okay. Oh. If I go ahead and run this Paclet documentation build function, pointing it at my Paclet, I'm going to call your attention to the files over here on the right, because it's actually going to produce some new files, which are the built documentation. Well, I restarted my system earlier because of that problem, so I'm going to have to load PacletTools again. That's pretty simple. So there we go. It's loading PacletTools, and now and I forgot to evaluate that again. Okay. All right. So now it's going to load PacletTools. We get some warnings here because we haven't included some version metadata in our file. That's okay. But you can see that it's actually created this new build directory over here inside of our Paclet. And this build directory contains a layout of files that's basically identical to our source Paclet. But because we've only asked it to build documentation, it's only put the documentation in here. You can see it's also actually created some new files. There are these search index files. These are just metadata that allows efficient searching when you have this Paclet installed and you want to search for something in it in the documentation center. But what we really care about is the built version of that page we just authored. So if I go ahead and open this up, it's going to pop up over here. So yeah, so this is our built page. Obviously, it's got all the same content as in our authoring notebook, but it's styled just like the documentation that's in the Wolfram language that I'm sure are all familiar with. So the point here being that these are the same tools that we use to author documentation every day, and they're available to users, and anyone can use them to author their own documentation. So that's building documentation. So what if I want to actually share the Paclet that I've been authoring with other folks? The way I do that is using the Paclet build function. So I just use the Paclet documentation build function to build only the documentation. Paclet build actually goes a step farther and builds all of the content that's in my Paclet, not just the documentation, but it copies in the PacletInfo file and my source files as well, and any other content that I might have in my Paclet. Now, importantly, Paclet build, you'll notice it doesn't copy in this resource definition notebook up here, which I'll get to it a little later describing what that is. But suffice it to say, this notebook is not considered part of my Paclet, and Paclet build knows that, so it doesn't actually copy it into the build directory, which is exactly what we want. And likewise, it's common for, you might have a README file in your Paclet, you might have some private scripts, you might have documentation that you don't want to share with other people. That's all fine. Paclet build knows not to include any files that aren't declared in your PacletInfo file. So because we don't have any extension in our PacletInfo file that references this resource definition notebook, Paclet build knows not to include it. So that's Paclet build. Now you can see Paclet build, in addition to creating these other files in here, it's also created something entirely new, which is this .paclet file. This is actually an archive format of the Paclet. It's got all the Paclet content in it. So this is the file that you'd want to share with people you work with, or friends or colleagues who want to try out your Paclet. So you could email it to them if you want. These days, we'd probably encourage you to upload it to the Paclet repository and let everyone benefit from it. But the choice is yours. So once you have a .paclet file and you want to actually use it in the Wolfram language, maybe you sent it to somebody and they want to know how to use it, it's real simple. There's a Paclet install command. And if you run that and pass it the file path to that .paclet file, it goes ahead and installs it in your system. And now if I quit my session, so I'm starting over fresh, but I asked the system, where is Connor Gray backtick my Paclet? It actually still knows about my Paclet because I've installed it. So when you install a Paclet, that's making it persistently available, and that Paclet will stay around until you uninstall it. And you can see it's placed it in an appropriate directory on my system, and there it is. So if I decide maybe I'm done with this Paclet, or maybe it's an older version I want to get rid of, you just say Paclet uninstall, and now if you try to load it, system doesn't know about it anymore. But you can uninstall and install as you wish. Oh, and I should mention, importantly, let me go ahead and install this again. Well, here. So I'm going to go Paclet install, and I'm just going to give it the path to, here, I'll just browse to it, give it that .paclet file path. I'm going to run that. So I've installed it again because that's one thing I forgot to demo. So when you have an installed Paclet, not only can you load its code, you can also view its documentation in the documentation center. So if I search for that say hello function, well, the system should be able to find it. Let me see, did I? Well, let me just see if I say Connor Gray, my Paclet ref, say hello. There might be, yeah. Well, okay, there's clearly something wrong with my installation, but normally that works. You can just search for the function that you've defined, and it's going to show up in the search results. Just like it's built-in documentation where you can just search for it in the help browser. Users of your Paclet will be able to search for it and have the help pages show up. And this works for function reference pages, it works for tutorials, it works for guide pages. It also works for content in your Paclet. So if this is working properly, if I wanted, I could search in the system, say greeting message, and it would list this page as a result because it knows to index keywords and things in the documentation. So that's building in this documentation and viewing it. Now, there are a couple of choices if you want to share your documentation online, say. Now, obviously, the Paclet repository is where if you want to share public code, public Paclets, that we definitely recommend you deploy it. But there are other options if you want to deploy maybe to your own private web server, or you want to deploy maybe a pre-release version of the Paclet that you don't really want to put on the, you don't want to announce on the public Paclet repository. There are a couple options. So yeah, just reload this. So the one option is you can use Paclet documentation build and specify a second argument, which is going to be the destination for your built documentation. And you can actually specify a cloud object. And if you do that, let's see if I've got, yeah, it's not, haven't done that yet, but you could run this. Though this is good if you really want documentation that's in your own private cloud account and you only care about documentation. There's actually a better way these days, which I'll show in just a minute. But this is built based around cloud notebooks. If you want to deploy raw HTML, I mean, for example, if you have your own private web server and you don't want to rely on, say, linking to pages on the Wolfram Cloud, you just want it to be on your website, you can also use Paclet documentation build to generate HTML. Now, I won't go into this example just because I don't have a lot of time left, but suffice it to say, if you have a look at the documentation for Paclet documentation build, it goes through how you can either deploy that HTML to the cloud, just as an easy way to test out that it works, or you can specify a file path in here, just a place on your computer to build that HTML, and then you can deploy it to your web server if you want. Right, so that's kind of the end of the main part of this talk. There are a couple things I'm going to still talk about related to the Paclet repository and this resource definition notebook. But I'll quickly mention this Paclet repository I keep talking about. We've got a nice URL for it. It's paclets.com. Hopefully everyone can remember that. But if you go there, that's just going to take you to the home page of the Paclet repository, like I showed you before. And from here, we've got documentation on how you can use things from the repository, create your own Paclets, and you can also browse through all the Paclets that are currently published. And if you publish a Paclet to the repository, it's going to end up being shown in this list as well. So it'll be easily discoverable by everyone who browses the repository. I also mentioned that I happen to have, I've assembled a collection of resources that are, I think, useful for people who are developing Paclets. It's a collection of internal documentation. It's a collection of some conference talks that have been given in recent years by myself and others who work on the Paclet system. I've got a QR code here for anyone who wants to scan that. That's a useful set of resources. It includes recordings like talks like this one, and it includes links to all the relevant documentation that's in the Wolfram language about Paclets. So I mentioned the last thing I'm going to talk about is this resource definition notebook. This is the way that you actually, if you want to publish a Paclet to the Paclet repository, this is how you do it. So this is kind of a set of tools for preparing your Paclet for the repository. The notebook itself is the content that's going to appear on that home page for your Paclet. So it's, you can write a description of your Paclet. You can include an image. So this is kind of the what you'd call the hero image, the thing that maybe grabs people's attention about your Paclet. You can have longer descriptions. You can link to the main guide page, kind of the main list of functions that are in your Paclet. And you can include some maybe high-level examples just to show people who are browsing the repository what your Paclet's all about. So that's this. There's some other metadata in here about maybe you want to fill in the source code location of your Paclet, your name, obviously, things about software licensing. If you want to be sure to tell people what terms they're allowed to use your Paclet under, and some categorization things I won't go into. But this is all about kind of describing your Paclet so other people know what it's about and how they can use it. This notebook has a number of other useful functionality in it. It has there's a check button, which will kind of run linting and code analysis over your Paclet and tell you if there's anything that looks wrong or suspicious. Maybe a mistake you made or a piece of information you forgot to include. You can see it's telling me I haven't written a description, and there's a file that's out of date and things like that. You can also build here. So this, if you click build all, that's essentially equivalent to running Paclet build yourself. So it'll actually, if I hadn't already built, you can see it's reprocessing the files in here. Crucially, it includes a submit to repository button. No, I'm not going to click it because I don't want to submit this example Paclet, but this is what you would click if you wanted to share your Paclet with the world on the Paclet repository. But it's also got this deploy button tucked in here. And this is a way that you can actually publish your Paclet publicly or semi-publicly without actually having to make it indexed on the Paclet repository. This is a great way if you want to maybe share your Paclet with just a couple of people, or you're not ready for kind of a wide announcement of it on the repository. This deploys your Paclet under your personal cloud account. So you can see in the URL here, this is under my personal cloud account. And this is a shingle page that looks just like it would look like on the Paclet repository website. So deploying it to your own cloud account is another great way. If say you're working on the content in that notebook and you want to check that everything looks right when it's deployed to the web, you can just use that deploy button and say, only deploy to my cloud account, and you can just check that everything looks okay. But these deployed Paclets can also be installed directly, just like the Paclet repository shingle pages. These have a click to copy Paclet install command, and anybody who has access to this link can use this. So it's another great way if you want to share your Paclet with a limited group of people. Okay, well, I guess I think that's everything that I wanted to talk about. One thing I will mention, people who've submitted to the Wolfram function repository before know that the function repository has a built-in review mechanism. It's actually, we have humans who look at submissions and validate that there's nothing nefarious in them. That's not the case for the Paclet repository. The Paclet repository is intended to be kind of a more community wide open kind of thing. It's a place where if you have, say a Paclet's only partially finished, it's not fully polished, it's incomplete in places. It's an unmoderated forum where you can get something out there into the world quickly. So that means when you publish to the Paclet repository, your Paclet actually shows up, virtually instantaneously. It doesn't have to go through the review process that function repository submissions go through, which can sometimes take hours or up to a couple of days. So the Paclet repository is a truly public resource that anyone can publish anything to. Thank you all for coming, and I hope you enjoyed this presentation.